Hi, I'm President Deniz A. Erdal. Thank you for joining us for the 11th episode of the Fireside cast. Today I'm joined in the studio by Cabinet Member Jon Orth.
Thanks for having me, Des. It's good to be back.
It's great to have you, John. We'll be spending much of today's episode talking about the school board's decision to get rid of our computers and to replace them with iPads for the next school year. John, I know a lot of parents and a lot of students have very strong opinions about this issue. What's your opinion?
Well, I think there's not a whole lot of reason behind it besides kind of cost and control. One thing is that the budget for the laptops and the one-to-one technology is kind of one and the same with the budget for the new building. And I think they've kind of took a lot out of that budget out for that new building, kind of more than they should have. So now they're forced to make these budget cuts. And another thing is kind of control. One thing they mentioned in their email is that they will be able to provide more like age-appropriate material. So they're kind of trying to also restrict it even further because there's a lot of capability of laptops that you don't really get with iPads.
Well, you brought up the funding issue, and I believe in the second episode, Kevin and I were talking about how the school's plan right now for the new school, excuse me, is already over budget. But I believe there were two separate tax levies passed. One for the technology, which I believe was passed about 3 or 4 years ago, back when we were in 6th grade, and then another one last year for the new school. So I am a bit surprised that the school doesn't have adequate funding, because when they were asking us to pass this tax levy as the taxpayers of Upper Arlington, we were promised $1,000 computers, not a $300 iPad.
One thing that could be a possibility is that they may have the money to pay for a whole new set of laptops, but realistically, it would be a much better alternative. They would have a lot more to spend if they went with iPads. And one thing you mentioned, the like $1,000 computer, which is accurate for current MacBooks. And one thing they cite in their email too is OSU's recent one-to-one technology program with iPad Pros, which while are similar to the ones that we will be receiving, don't quite have the same capabilities. So I think that's not a very accurate comparison to have. And if they were to get as iPad Pros, there's almost no point because they have roughly the same price point as the current MacBook Airs. So.
And of course, I'd say a lot of the students probably use their computers to type essays, or create a PowerPoint, or Google Slides. We don't have PowerPoint because we have Apple computers, but a Google Slide. And I can't see anyone doing those sort of projects on an iPad because, first of all, there isn't a keyboard, and we'll get to that later. But you don't have a keyboard, and it's incredibly difficult to do any sorts of projects like that on an iPad. I do see it working for younger elementary students.
Yes.
I think an iPad for them is perfectly reasonable. I mean, you can't expect a kindergartner to have a MacBook Air, but I think once you get to middle school, the computer definitely makes way more sense in my eyes. I know since we were given computers in 7th grade, a lot of classwork has been transferred onto the computer. For example, with Math Excel, Google Classroom, Schoology, other online school components. And so I think making such a drastic change to the school's computer policy, while a lot of the schooling is going on via computer, I think that's absurd.
And you talked about how iPads are suitable for elementary, and I recently traveled to Wycliffe Elementary as part of Hour of Code. And within that environment, the iPads are a very good tool, and they're very understandable for the students. And experiencing middle school with the laptops, I couldn't imagine making that switch with the iPads. And I think you said like a lot of the current things we're doing now would be very difficult or almost impossible to do with iPads.
Well, I do completely agree with your points about the younger children. Let's transition a bit to the keyboard part. I know the school was planning to rent out keyboards. I don't think that's a very good idea. For one, I'd say a lot of students tend to type essays at home rather than at school, and it would make it very difficult, I'd say, to do homework assignments. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think the whole idea of having basically these communal keyboards that you borrow for the day, not even for like a while, and that in the way they worded it in their email, it definitely seems like you won't be able to take them home, and I feel like that definitely inhibits classwork. And we talked about like writing essays, how that would be hard on an iPad, and the keyboard makes it definitely easier. So I couldn't imagine doing it without that. And another thing is, it's kind of, I don't know if unhygienic is the word, but I think it's odd to have kind of these shared keyboards. And I don't know how difficult it would be to provide students with keyboards, because it'd almost be equivalent of, because every student has, like a laptop charger, which costs a substantial amount. And if they're saving money with the iPads, they should be able to provide additional equipment that would make them more usable.
Of course. And this brings me to my next point. Throughout last week, starting as soon as this email was sent out, a lot of the students, including myself, and I'd say a lot of the class government, has been firmly opposed to this measure by the school board. I know I started a petition, a paper one, and I was able to collect 218 signatures. Well, actually about 230 now as of today. However, that's nothing compared to another petition, which is going on change.org. I believe they have close to 2,000 signatures. And I think that should send a very strong message to the folks on the school board, because they are, after all, elected officials, and they do have to answer to the public of Upper Arlington.
Yeah, I think these measures that students are taking are very good, and they're in the right direction. Of course, it's very hard to change a decision like this, especially since it's mostly been already made. But the two things that you kind of need if you want to make an impact on public policy like this is a lot of people, which we have, both from students, parents, company leaders, and we also have a steady argument that we can defend and use to fight with. So if we keep going with this, on this path of defending our right to like these laptops, and with our current argument, I think it is possible, although unlikely, that we could actually make an impact.
Yes, I certainly hope so. And I just want to send out a message to everyone in the class of 2021 and all students in Upper Arlington. As the class president of the sophomore class, I will fight for our computers, and I will keep on fighting until we get our computers back.
Before we move on, one more additional point that kind of defeats the whole purpose of the iPads is classes such as computer science or engineering, where the software that is required for those, like Java IDs or 3D modeling software, is completely not available on the iPads. And in those circumstances, and they vaguely refer to this in their email, students will be provided with other devices, aka laptops. So I think what will happen is a large amount of students are going to take these courses, which are not easy courses, in order to receive these laptops. And I think it's you're definitely going to see a lot of people trying to get their laptops back.
Now, I don't think the school board at this point will be willing to bend down completely to the computer advocates, but what I'd like to propose is a phase-out system, similar to what was done with Open Lunch. I think the people who currently have computers should be able to keep them until they graduate. But then the new incoming classes start out with the iPads. I think that would make for a good compromise in which advocates for both of the policies can get something out of it.
And I think that would also allow for teachers to slowly adjust their course structure, because I think that would be somewhat necessary with a switch like this. I think that would be good, because one reason we're seeing a whole lot of people talking now against this is, compared to Open Lunch, is it's this kind of gradual change that is more acceptable and more. It's easy to get used to, compared to this kind of thing that affects everyone at the same time and is super sudden, and it's just it leaves a lasting impact on people.
Like you said, it will definitely leave a lasting impact on Upper Arlington for a long time, regardless of the decision school board eventually makes. But we will keep on fighting for computers, and I know there are 2,000 students and a lot of parents stand with us. And as I was collecting signatures for the petition, I would say the majority of the teachers who I went up to ask if they'd like to sign the petition said that they support the cause, but that they can't sign it. And so I think that we've got a very strong coalition of the vast majority of students, a vast majority of parents, and a majority of the teachers, even though they might not publicly say it. And so I think we have a very strong coalition right now, and hopefully we'll end up keeping our computers.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But every little bit that we're doing helps, so
Yeah.
we'll see where this ends up. But
And if you haven't signed the petition yet, I would strongly encourage you to go and sign the petition on change.org and to send your message to the school board. Well, this brings us to today's second topic, a more lighthearted subject. This week, the class officers and I had started the sale of the Winter Dance raffle. However, it didn't exactly go as planned. On Monday, we sold about 2 tickets, and some people just donated money. That brought us up to a total of about $4.50. On Tuesday, we sold only 1 more ticket, and some people gave us some spare change, bringing our total up to $5.58. Now, that is a bit pathetic, I'd say, for the class officers, and including myself. I was hoping that there would be a bit more interest in the winter dance at this point, but unfortunately there wasn't, and we can't just take $5.40 to charity and say, here you go, here's $5. So we have decided to postpone the winter dance raffle until the week after winter break, at which point I think the students will be more excited about the winter dance.
yeah, I think one thing you gotta take into account is the winter dance is still pretty far away. It's about a week and a month away. So I think as people kind of find people to go with and kind of get excited for it, I think a lot more people will buy tickets. So.
Yes, and it would have been nice to be able to donate to charity before the holiday season.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a nice thing to do, but unfortunately, weren't able to do that. That brings us to our third and final segment for this week's episode, and that is the passing of President George H.W. Bush, who died at his home last week. And this week there was the state funeral in Washington, and there was a funeral service at the National Cathedral last Wednesday, which was attended by all the former presidents. President Trump was there, the Obamas, the Clintons, and the Carters as well were also present. And something that was very interesting, I think, at the funeral was the Obamas shook hands with the Trumps. However, the Clintons didn't even turn around to see that they had arrived. And I know a lot of the people on the news networks have been analyzing this over and over. I think we shouldn't be focusing on that at the moment. I think what we need to remember is the life of President George H.W. Bush. He started out basically at the bottom of political life. He was the county executive in Texas, and then he became a congressman, senator, and then he was the envoy to the United Nations, the ambassador to China, vice president, and then president. He started at the very bottom, and he went all the way to the very top. And I think that is the American dream. Major funding for the Fireside cast has been provided by Serpent Cinematography,
Thunderstruck Studios,
the Combat Robot Kev Foundation, empowering robotics engineering since 2016,
and Evolved Turtle Productions.
and from contributions from listeners like you. Thank you. If you'd like to sponsor an episode and have your name mentioned in the end slate, visit the Fireside Cast's Patreon page, or contact a cabinet member for further information.